Century 21, smarter, bolder, faster. Is that talking about you, Charles? I think it is.
I might be able to grab one of those titles, but not all three, certainly not at the same time. Anyway.
No, I'm not so sure about that. You're pretty bold and fast to me. Now, welcome again to a Monday night.
Thank you.
Plenty
Hope you had
going
a great
on.
time. You were down the South Coast
Yeah,
last week.
we took some time off last Monday.
Down the beautiful part of Bulli, down the South Coast.
Yeah, I grew up in that area when I was a kid. I do love the South Coast of New South Wales. There's plenty to be had. You know, it's not quite as busy as the north.
No, it's not, but that road that's going all the way through from Sydney is going to create a bit more traffic down there. I know that you won't get the traffic jams at Berry, which can be 4 or 5 kilometres long nearly every weekend. And Berry will get back to its rightful title of being a very peaceful and, in its own way, bustling little restaurant and cafe and all different types of antique stores and everything you find there. It's a really pretty little spot.
We've got to put up with a bit of short-term pain when there's new infrastructure, don't we?
You sure do, man.
Yeah.
Sure do.
So plenty coming up tonight. Later, we'll have a look at capital gains ease and talk to Cameron Kusher. And we'll also go around the grounds with a couple of your franchisees, one from Bathurst. Now, Bathurst, what I'm led to believe, I speak to quite a few tradespeople, and they rate it. It's pretty busy, Bathurst.
Yeah, and I think we were speaking about it last week. I was speaking to Clinton about it last week. I think we mentioned Bathurst. The fact that area there is just like where I live in the Blue Mountains. When the 4 lanes came through, and they were going to be completed in 1985, mind you, but they've just been completed all the way up to Lura area.
Don't mention the war.
When you go from Lura all the way through to Bathurst, there's so much roadworks going on right the way through, and I know it'll open up that area, and it is a magnificent city with a lot of history. And a lot of area to move, which is great. Golf course there for people to play golf. Great RSL club, some fantastic restaurants in Bathurst too. Yeah,
and great schooling, and potentially for folks who want to get away from the big smoke, a semi-rural existence. And it's really important to remember that the Blue Mountains of New South Wales is a global destination. It's frequented also by loads of people from Brisbane and Melbourne annually. It's a real destination point, and Bathurst is really just a roll down the hill west by, say, 90 minutes or thereabouts.
And then you go a little bit further west of that and you hit Orange, which also has become an incredibly diverse city with lots of beautiful wineries and restaurants. So I see a lot happening out west, and I'm hoping that many people will take the opportunity to get out there and have a look. There's a lot of subdivisions going on out there, so the affordability is better than most other regional areas, or certainly in the capital cities. And if you can get work there, which has always been the biggest issue when you're travelling outside of capital cities, Bathurst and Orange are strong capital cities, but if you can get work out there, they're beautiful places to bring up your family.
We'll also have a chat to Maddie Dolan, who's at Century 21 in Redcliffe. So we'll go up to Queensland and have a look in there. Yeah,
she has a great story, Maddie. She started a long time ago in real estate. I dare say, I can't say too long, she'll have a go at me, but she started in an area of certainly of holiday letting and became a really strong specialist in that area. Expanded her business to a couple of locations and captured a significant amount of the sales market in Redcliffe. And Redcliffe is one of those areas that you hear about, but it's quite unknown in the true sense because of its potential being not that far when you think about going further north into the Sunshine Coast or back down into Brisbane. So it's in one of those great locations. We're in the middle of 2 great opportunities that are happening in real estate.
And it's on the water too. There's been a lot of growth north of Brisbane, hasn't there? There's
been a tremendous amount of growth, and rightly so. I think when you look down the south of Brisbane, you look at the Gold Coast and those areas, they've been moving along for quite some time, and they got bogged down in marketplaces when the apartment complexes became or turned into a massive oversupply on the Gold Coast, and people were keeping away from it. With the Sunshine Coast having its own airport as well, it just made it such an attractive place to go to. But I talk about the Sunshine Coast a lot because I like the fact that it has a very, very large population that lives there. You don't, as in the Gold Coast where it might be a bit more transient, the Sunshine Coast has got a great base of people who live and have established themselves. And I think when you go all the way up north of Brisbane through into Redcliffe, all the way right up to the Sunshine Coast and Noosa, that area is an incredibly attractive area for real estate.
Didn't Century 21 give away an apartment on the Sunshine Coast?
Oh, thank you for bringing. I didn't even ask you to rate raise this. Isn't that nice? That happened.
The ads worked, mate.
Oh, thank you.
I've been listening to the ads.
That happened on Monday. Friday.
Yeah.
Today was the official notification of all parties concerned, although I did ring the winner personally, and we're going to launch that on Wednesday, but I can say only to you that the winner was a person that realised their asset. They sold their property through us, and it was after many, many years of hard work. They sold their property, realised that asset, and were sitting back trying to work out how to handle and help family members. And when I rang them, the gentleman asked me probably 5 or 6 times, "What was your name again? And are you serious about why you're calling?" Because the opportunity was you could take the 2-bedroom apartment on the Sunshine Coast, which is it's off the plan.
Yeah.
So if you didn't want to wait for that to be constructed, we would actually give you a cheque for $400,000, which is a significant amount of money.
I'd like one of those.
And look, so do all my friends.
Yeah.
And we verified this gentleman, Australian citizen, and that it was his property that he sold, and he's not an employee of the company or actually an employee of any real estate company, because they were also disqualified from entering. And his wife got my recorded message first. She rang up and she just still couldn't believe it. So she handed the phone to, I'll tell you his first name, Brian, and he just kept asking me. So when my phone dropped out, I think he must have thought it was a hoax, and it took me about 5 or 6 minutes to get my phone charged back up again and call him. And I'm really thrilled about announcing the fact that these hardworking people have won. I think they're going to take the $400,000 because he mentioned helping a family member in Sydney purchase a property.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
It's really good news.
Well, congratulations to Brian and your wife and his wife, if they're listening
and Julie,
tonight.
Brian and Julie, and that's it.
And Julie.
I'll leave it at that.
And next time, Charles, if you don't mind, it'd be great if we could actually, do the giveaway on the radio, so that when we come to this point on the show, I could say tonight on Property Fast Track, we're giving away an apartment. So we could do that.
Yeah. We could, and it was a massive prize. There's no question about it.
Cool.
Look, we obviously were without any thought of saying to you, touting for business. We're touting for business. We want people to use the services of Century 21 agents, and it was about landlords, and it was about buyers, and it was about sellers, that if they did business with us, they had to conclude their business with us after going through our open for inspections or inquiring about our services, that we would give them the opportunity. And we brought in clients from the past, and this particular individual was actually from the past, because we couldn't discount all of our existing clients that have done business with us, so we included them in the draw, and our automated system pulled out the first name. We had a lawyer present to make sure that it was satisfactory from the lottery's point of view, and that was the first name. Usually the first name that comes out, you check, qualify, and it may not qualify. These people qualify straight away, so it's great news.
Fantastic. So tonight, if you've got any questions for Charles, he's here to help you. 13 12 83. Maybe you want to get into real estate. Perhaps you want to reshuffle your deck.
I'd like to talk to people who want to get into real estate. I'd like to try and understand what it's all about, because it is an industry, as you know, that I've been around for 45 years, and I have seen a lot of changes in it, and still witnessing many, many changes. But for me, it's always been a profession. A lot of people may treat it as a job and not see the benefit of, like I always say to people, there's nothing better than showing an average home to an average couple. They buy it for an average price, they keep it for an average period of time, and they make money on it. And I love that, because there's not many products that you can sell where people walk away and after a period of time they make money from them. Most assets that you buy, whether it's white goods or cars, depreciate in value very quickly.
Yeah, it doesn't happen with cars, that's for sure. 13 12 83, Charles Tarbey here to help you out with Property Fast Track tonight, 13 12 83. So, Charles, what do you make of the auction clearance rates over the weekend?
Now, this was an interesting thing, because last week it was called, I think by UBS, called the top of the market. And I think the market's certainly slowing down. It's changing, and I'm glad about that. And we've chatted weeks on end with Tom Panos, and Tom said, there are fewer people turning up at auctions and fewer people at open for inspections, and so they call the top of the market, and they used the fact that the auction clearance rates for the last couple of weeks have been down, and I thought, this is really odd. It's a very wrong time to be calling at the top of the market based on auction clearance rates, especially when you've had 2 long weekends in a row. So of course, true to form, the market bounced back, and Sydney hit an 81% clearance rate, and Melbourne 82%. 65% clearance rate. The only market that slowed compared to what it has been doing for a period of time was Canberra, but it's still very strong at 67.9% clearance rate. So overall across the country was 76.9, and this time last year it was 71.3. So we're still up on this time last year. Sydney's up on this time last year. Melbourne's up on this time last year, and Canberra's slightly up on this time last year. So I'm not calling the top of the market at this point in time. I can see the changes occurring, and I'm glad they are. I really am glad they are. But let's face reality, the top of the market was reached in some of the capital cities across Australia some time ago when the mining boom collapsed, or when the mining boom just disappeared on everybody. The top of the market was called then. So we're really only talking about a few city locations.
Yeah, best performing cap city was Hobart with a 5.1% increase.
Yes. And again, Hobart itself, as you know, the investment line there that we've been looking at, where you can buy property significantly lower than many other capital cities around the country. And we were talking about buying brand new homes for $230,000, $240,000. Complete, ready to go. And
unheard of on the mainland.
Very much so. The biggest issue we were looking there was to make sure that you get that increased and improved capital gain. So they've had a little bit there, but they haven't had a great deal. So it'd be interesting to see it over a period of time, Nick.
Okay, 13 12 83. Charles Tarbey here to help you tonight. If you've got any real estate questions. Vacancy rates, what do you make of those at the moment?
Look, I'm really excited again about Perth. Perth has been tragic for quite some time.
Yeah.
And the vacancy rates have been in the sevens now for 2 weeks in a row. I've never seen that with Perth. They were consistently climbing, and they've dropped back over a period of time after reaching a peak from my charts of 10.17, which was very, very scary. So today, when I look at the charts, and I did these charts today, it's 7.85%. That's a pretty good clearance rate. If it keeps heading in that direction, I'm going to be very happy. But the best performer was Sydney, and Sydney came in at an incredible 0.54% vacancy rate, and Melbourne had a 1.36% vacancy rate. So they're really good stats. And again, I'm encouraged by Perth, very encouraged by Perth. Although the prices of properties in Perth have still been declining, and I guess when we get Cameron on later on, he'll be able to talk to us a little bit more about the Perth market and what their stats are showing.
What do you make of rent increases at the moment? Not
a great deal around the countryside. There was an average of 0.7% increase this week over last week. It's now increased when I take the chart back 2 years, back to January in 2015. I started recording a second phase of trying to do 24 months plus. And from that particular time, the rates across Australia, the rent movement across Australia, has now climbed 3.27%. But in some areas, it's gone backwards. Sydney hasn't been the best performer lately because I think there's a lot of investment properties starting to come through from purchases. There'll be a lot of investment properties coming through from people that purchase off the plan as they come through. So I think that will probably keep the Sydney market stable, but there's a lot of demand, so the vacancy rates will stay low.
Okay, Charles Tarbey here tonight giving some advice on real estate, whether it be commercial or resi. If you're an investor or looking to buy your first home, he's here to help you. 13 12 83. In a moment, we'll check out the weekend auction clearances. General auction chat with Brian Cannan in just a moment. Nick Bennett tonight, Charles Tarbey taking your calls on 13 12 83. Good to be here for this Monday night. Property markets around Australia continue to serve up plenty to talk about when it comes to auctions. Has Sydney come off the boil? There's one question. There's chat about the market topping out. Are we seeing that when the hammer comes down? Well, as for Melbourne, it seems to have had a cracking weekend after a quiet school holiday period, recording the second highest clearance rate for the year. Let's find out some more with Brian Cannan, who's a highly experienced auctioneer with Think Real Estate. He's a 25-year veteran and has presided over tens of thousands of auctions.
Yes, and he has. And he conducted auctions for us too, Nick. We were part of a show that actually didn't take, sadly. It was a renovation show, and we were the auctioneers on that renovation show. It was one of the early ones to do, to follow suit.
You're ahead of the pack.
I'm trying to think of what it was called now, but we did actually sell a property under the hammer and very concerned about how it all went, but the buyer was so enthusiastic. I had to actually step up to him and say, look, I think what's your maximum? He told me. I said, you've gone over that. Now you need to stop bidding. He said, look, thanks for the advice. And he walked back in the crowd, put his hand up for another bid. and Mr. Brian Cannan was our auctioneer at the time. Good to hear from you tonight, Brian.
Hello, Charles. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Let's start out with Sydney, normally a perennial performer, but some say it's off the boil a bit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that just at the moment.
Yeah.
There was 653 listings on the weekend, 399 sold with a clearance rate of 81%.
Yeah,
So,
that's
good clearance rate.
That's brilliant, Brian, because we were just chatting earlier on about the fact that they called the top of the market a week ago because the clearance rates were so low. They didn't factor in Easter and Anzac weekends, and it's the worst thing that could have been done. Sure, the market is slower, and we know there are a number of different if banks, for example, are moving interest rates without RBA involvement. So you've got APRA who are making some changes and looking at investors. So there are a bunch of things that are happening to slow it down. But it's still, like you and I both know, you only need one person who wants to buy a property at auction to sell it.
Well, Charles, our company clearance rate was 90% on the weekend.
Wow.
We had results in the morning at Guy Mere. You probably know about it, one of your offices.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Had 200,000 over, and then an hour later, another 201,000 over to the benchmark for the day. And then later on the day, we had another one not too far away from there, another 265,000 over reserve. And to finish up the day, we had the last one with another one of the offices over in Elwood at 500,000 over the reserve. That's amazing, isn't it? That's
absolutely unbelievable. And again, when you consider the fact that people are calling the top of the market, it's really, really hard to understand why that's happening, why the clearance rates are still so high or the over reserve prices. And this is where we got into trouble, Brian, if you'll recall, with real estate agents underquoting. That's been a big thing of recent times.
Yeah.
How do you work it out? How do you work out what the price is in a moving market with low interest rates where enthusiasm has gone through the roof?
Look, all you can do is be honest with the people as to what you think it is, and then the market tells you after that. And if you have two people... Look, the last one was interesting. 500,000, it doesn't happen all that often. And over the reserve, what happened was the two neighbours were wanting the property. They were of different extraction, and they decided that they didn't like each other to own that property, and so they just kept bidding until they couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah, it's a tough game, isn't it? In March of this year, New South Wales Fair Trading Officers conducted a crackdown, they say, inspecting 124 real estate businesses and checking documents to ensure prices they quoted sellers matched the prices they quoted prospective buyers. 22 fines issued at $2,200 each, but very hard to enforce, so no prosecutions.
No, look... In New South Wales, and same in Victoria, you have with legislation that came in today in Victoria, you can only quote a figure 10% higher than the lowest figure you think it's worth. And so in one of those offices I was there last week, the salesperson, I don't know whether they used a calculator or not, but they quoted $950,000 to $1,050,000. So what they should have had on their agency agreement was $950,000 to $1,045,000.
Okay.
And they got fined for that. So that is a breach. I mean, the law's black and white, but that's just a simple...
I think, Brian, if real estate practitioners knew what was going to happen in the marketplace with all the enthusiasm, and an owner said, I definitely want this much money, you'd buy it yourself and say, look, I'll buy it off you for that much, and I'm going to probably put it on the market for auction in a few weeks' time. Are you unhappy with that? How do we know? And,
That's right.
And it is a really difficult thing. Are you hiding somewhere, Brian? Your phone's cutting in and out somewhere.
Oh, no, my apologies about that. No.
You just have to get out of your wine cellar, mate, and stand still so we can hear you.
Brian, what's happening in Melbourne? They recorded the second highest clearance rate of the year at 82%. Do you think that's a good result?
I think, look, if I owned a shop and my stock every 4 weeks was 80% was being sold, I'd be a very happy shopkeeper.
And they had 1,048 auctions too, Brian.
They did, and they sold 659. That's amazing. That really is amazing. I mean, in Sydney we have a stock shortage, but in Melbourne has 1,048 listings went to market on Saturday, a couple of weeks after Easter and Anzac Day. That's an 82% result. The interesting part to me is the median prices. The median prices in Sydney was 1,242,000, but in Melbourne was 784.
1,242,000, the mean price. Wow, boy.
Yes, but 784 in Melbourne. So Sydney still seems to be an area that is increasing in price.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's a city everybody wants to live in, and I get that, and it's not going to be resolved. I heard Tim Lawless talking earlier on. Tim's a very, very intelligent analyst. He was suggesting not so much apartments, but perhaps even looking, as we were talking about, Nick, we were talking about semi-detached housing, which you could easily do in areas without compromising height regulations and so on. So, Brian, I think that's one of the biggest issues still.
I do. I think they need to do that. Look, I think the housing market is going to split in two this year. The unit market won't be as strong, but the housing market will still stay strong.
Okay.
Why do you say that about units, Brian?
Well, I don't think the banks are saying too much about it yet, but in the next 12 to 18 months, I think you're going to hear lots of stories. You have the overseas investors that came and bought off the plan. They can't get their money out of China. The banks aren't going to lend them any money, and there's going to be a lot of defaults.
You're really talking about that issue that has been raised a number of times. It hasn't quite shown itself, but it's starting to in the fact that some of the developers have taken projects off the shelf that they might have started. And I think you're also referring to the fact that when a property is constructed or completed and people go to settle the property, the banks are going to call for a valuation again. And some of those valuations may not meet the expectations of the original purchase price.
Well, I can say that they're not. There's a number of them that are not. And so they have to find extra money to put in as the deposit, and the overseas investors can't do that, and the banks aren't financing them. Now, I was talking to a developer 2 weeks ago. He's been told by a bank that he's got to get 60% pre-sales, but if he sells to an overseas investor, those pre-sales won't be included in the 60%.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Wow, okay.
Brian, good to talk to you tonight. Brian's an auctioneer with Think Real Estate. Appreciate your insights, mate. 13 12 83 is our number. Property Fast Track, Nick Bennett tonight, and Charles Tarbey taking your call on that number. And just while we're on to foreign ownership, because that just popped up in the conversation there with Brian, Charles, federal budget set to slug foreign buyers thousands in fees if they leave their investment property vacant. That's news out from Sky News today.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's an interesting concept. Because if they stand in some of the streets of Sydney, if they stand around some of the apartment complexes, they'll be able to count how many places are vacant, because there are a lot of properties without lights on, and it's not past 7 o'clock at night when you see this. So there are a significant number of properties that have been bought that are just sitting there. My biggest concern is, as always, is how do you put this together? The FIRB, Foreign Investment Review Board, had their problems going all the way back there, and had 4 people, I think, working in that entire division at one time, trying to manage that process. So does that mean they're going to bolster that? They're going to bolster another government department? Will that government department really make a change, or will it just create more jobs? And how will they enforce it?
Hard to enforce it. One proposal is to investigate the daily water usage of each property in cooperation with the states.
Well, they do that in reverse nowadays, in the sense that if there are overuse of water, they're the properties that they target for drug labs and so on.
Oh, of course.
Yep, that's a fact. That's a known fact in the industry. When we see water bills going through the roof, we start wondering what's going on in those properties. Yeah,
right. Weird smells, excessive water usage, and lights are on all night. Something's going on.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not a card game. It's not a card game.
Somebody is home there too.
Yes, right. Charles Tarbey tonight, 13 12 83, taking your calls on Property Fast Track, and we'll go around the grounds in just a minute. Yeah, good to have your calls tonight on 13 12 83 for Charles Tarbey. Nick Bennett with you. Barbara's got a big question for you, Charles.
Oh, wonderful. Barbara.
Oh, hi, Charles. I wanted to know if the property market is going to fall dramatically. My sister has all this data where it's going to collapse soon.
And whereabouts is the property located?
It's my mum, and if we can get her down for a nursing home room.
Right. Is she in Sydney, Melbourne?
Yes, Sydney.
Sydney? What part of Sydney?
Seven Hills.
Yeah, look, that area there is incredibly strong, Barbara. If I were you, I wouldn't be worrying too much at all about it. You've got more demand than supply there, so I'd just hang on. You shouldn't be in any rush at all. It's one of those areas that you're probably going to put your property up for auction because there's a lot of interest there, Barbara.
Well, we haven't got anywhere for Mum yet, and she wants to do it now, and I'm going, no. Well,
yeah, look, it's still not a bad time now, but I would suggest to you that if you're going to move her into a nursing home, it's going to cost you money and it's going to be equivalent, so everything's relative, Barbara. So I'd do it whenever it's right for your mum.
Thanks for your call, Barbara. 13 12 83. Charles Tarbey here to help you tonight with anything to do with property. And it's time for us to go round the grounds, a bit like a sports show. Thanks to Century 21's extensive national network of real estate agents, and it's always very cool to get a snapshot of a particular region and learn a bit more about it. On the line tonight from C21 Bathurst in New South Wales is Troy Kearney. G'day, Troy.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Charles.
Well, it might be morning for you, young fella. Get out of bed and get some work done, will you?
Yeah,
fair dinkum.
Come on, mate. He's probably got his moleskins on, his RMs.
He's been on holidays. I know he's been on holidays. He still thinks he's overseas. Now, Troy's got a fantastic history in real estate, as his wife, Tracy. Both involved in the industry directly and indirectly for a great many years, and Tracy has a strong history in commercial as well. So very good agents for the Bathurst regions. Can I just ask you a quick question? Troy, why did you decide to raise your family in Bathurst when you had other areas you could have gone to?
We were out here for a weekend away, and we were just dumbfounded by the people, the culture, the diversity of Bathurst. It's just it's an amazing place. Bathurst is extremely fortunate to have incredible education, incredible parks. It's an amazing place to live. So we went back to Sydney, and we said, you know what, let's move to Bathurst and be a part of that community. And we've been here for just on 8 years now, and we absolutely love it. And
I know you've managed to build a beautiful property on some acreage. So your acreage in Bathurst means you're only 5 minutes from town, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're 3 minutes from the highway. So it's fantastic. It's a 5-minute drive into the office, 3 minutes from the highway. And we're still living on an acre just on the outskirts. It's fantastic.
Living the dream, mate.
Sure is.
That's fantastic. What sort of acreage do you have? Like, how many acres?
Just an acre.
An acre?
An acre, 4,000 square metres.
That's acreage. Don't worry about it. You come down to the city of Sydney, my boy, a 200 square metre parcel of land is massive here in Inner West. So you're doing all right with 4,000 square metres.
No,
Troy,
we love it out here.
Troy, why should people buy in your area? Apart from what you've just told us, let's talk about the stock and price and whether it's homes or units and the median price.
Well, Bathurst has been very fortunate once again. The state government's just invested about $95 million into our roads and infrastructure in Bathurst. So we've now got a two-lane carriageway all the way through Bathurst, which is helping the residents and the visitors to the region. So that's helping bring a lot more people out here as well. But when it comes to our medium house price and sales and results in the last 12 months, Bathurst has had another record year. We had just on 993 sales within the region. And of those, the medium house price was $398,000. Wow. So that's up from $370,000 last year and 879 sales. So we've got an increase of about 7.6%. So
I guess meaning you could buy a property from $250 to $600 comfortably.
This is a great thing looking with the outside people looking into Bathurst. So there was since January 1 to now, the 1st of May, we've had 262 new properties come onto the market. 89 of those have been priced under $300,000.
Well, there you go.
And you're getting good returns on units, for example, because I know it's a university town as well, so I'm assuming there's a reasonable demand for rentals.
Yes. So if you're a good comparative would be if you're spending $300,000 out here, you're normally getting around $300 a week, $320 a week for your return. So it's a great investment when you look at comparisons from here to say Penrith, for example, or the Blue Mountains.
Yeah, it's very hard to get capital gain and a good rental return at the same time. Sometimes you've got to forfeit one for the other. Hopefully you're forfeiting your rental return because you want the capital gain. But it sounds to me like you're getting both out there in a very steady manner.
We're very lucky, actually, because we're not relying on, like our neighbours, Orange, Lithgow and Mudgee out here in regional New South Wales are very reliant on the resource sector, like the coal mining and gold mining. Bathurst infrastructure allows for consistent growth. We're not relying on any one industry. So that means over the last 10, 15 years, we've always had between 4 and 6% growth. In the last 12 months, it's picking up again slightly. So you're never going to have 19 or 20% growth like you do in Sydney, but you're never going to have those troughs either where it does go backwards.
Troy, just to wrap it up before we go north, where are your buyers coming from?
Sydney.
Yeah.
This is the great part about it. So they're not just people that are using the equity in their homes to invest in Bathurst. It's actually people that may be renting in Sydney, paying exorbitant rent in Sydney that just can't afford to get into the market. they're looking at Bathurst as their alternative. So they're coming out here, they're buying investment, they're still going back to Sydney to go and rent their home, but they're actually investing out here in central New South Wales. It's fantastic.
Barnaby Joyce would be happy. He would be stoked. Troy Kearney, thank you very much.
Great to hear from you, Troy, and Tracy out there as well. Thank you.
Century 21 in Bathurst as we go to Century 21 in Scarborough, which is kind of near Brisbane.
Well, it's near,
although, Scarborough might say that Brisbane's a suburb of
Western Australia. I mean, Scarborough is another place north of Perth, but no, we're on the eastern seaboard this time round.
G'day, Maddie. How you doing? Maddie Dolan.
I'm good. How are you? Happy Labor Day.
Yeah, you too. You're on a break today. Good luck to you.
Oh, yeah, I worked all day. No, we're not on a break.
Oh, you're not? I was going to apologise for getting you out on a public holiday evening, Maddie.
No. Perfect. This weather, you work all day.
Maddie, I was giving you big raps about your holiday letting, your background in that area, which is brilliant, and building a big sales team and opening up a couple of locations. And now I think the whole of Brisbane has caught up to you.
Yes. No, it's very, very exciting. And I think that the nice thing about here is that we're actually still a sleepy little hollow. People go down the coast of the Gold Coast and go up the Sunshine Coast, and then when they finally find the Redcliffe Peninsula, they're like, "Oh wow!"
Yeah, they've got to turn. They've got to turn right or left, haven't they? If they're going up or down, and some people do. They just miss it completely, which in its own way,
which is good actually. We don't want everybody coming here.
We won't say where you're from again. But you got some beautiful old Queenslanders. There's some lovely old homes through that area, aren't there?
No, not really.
Not really? Am I confused with Redcliffe?
No, actually, a lot of our old stuff is actually old seamen's cottages.
Okay.
And that's how Redcliffe actually evolved. It was actually the seaside cottage for the people that, blue-collar workers that their cars actually couldn't get to the coast, either Sunshine Coast or Gold Coast. So and we had the whole of Redcliffe Peninsula was encompassed by caravan parks. So the families came here, and this is what the whole of the waterfront was.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we don't have a caravan park now, but we've got an awesome structure. And if people come here for a lifestyle, it's boating, fishing, and just chilling out and having a good time.
Maddie, what's the transport like back into Brisbane City?
Oh, look, it's awesome because we've just, after 98 years, we've actually just got the rail in.
Yeah, Nick said that he thought that the rail had gone into Redcliffe, so there you go.
I got the old homes part wrong, but got the rail right.
Yeah, no, we're very excited. We've got the rail and we're in Brisbane now, so it makes it a lot easier for us.
And has that booted prices up a bit, Maddie, and demand for rentals?
Yeah, very much so. Our rentals have probably gone up about 8%, and our growth across the board is at 12.35%. So.
Now, you manage a significant number of properties. Can I ask you, what's the vacancy rate like for you in your particular area?
We're running at 1.2%.
Oh, well, that's below Melbourne, which I mentioned earlier on, and is just above Sydney, so that's exceptional, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's very exciting, but the thing is that people come here too, and once they get here, they're gobsmacked of everything that we've got, plus we're so close to the CBD and close to international and domestic airports. And you're like,
and look, how far is it? Right through to Sunshine Coast. How quick, if you're getting in a car to go to the airport there?
We're 25 minutes to
Brisbane
and international.
Yep.
We're 30 minutes to Brisbane.
And to Sunshine Coast.
We're about we're at 22 minutes to Caloundra.
Wow.
And then you go onwards to...
But, why would you?
Yep.
Why would you go further north, Maddie, when you can live where you are?
There you go. There we go. Maddie, really appreciate you talking to us about your area tonight, and lovely to hear your voice.
Maddie Dolan from Century 21 Scarborough in Brisbane. Good stuff. And still ahead tonight, Cameron Kusher, who's with CoreLogic. He's going to talk about CGTEs, capital gains E's. That's got some potential. It feels good, Charles. It's coming up in just a moment.
Never.
Nick Bennett and Charles Tarbey tonight, 13 12 83. If you want to be a part of our show tonight, we'd love to hear from you. How can this be? Are the two hottest property markets in the country showing signs of slowing down? Last week we heard from the investment bank UBS. It announced that they think the Australian housing market's peaked. Today, CoreLogic has published its Home Value Index report for April, which shows pretty slow month-on-month growth. Are the best times behind us? Cameron Kusher is CoreLogic's head of research and he's on board tonight. Good evening, Cameron.
Evening, Nick. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, Cameron, it's Charles. Long time no see.
Yeah, g'day, Charles. How are you?
Now, I was saying last week the UBS had it wrong. I know the market's slowing down, and we've been talking about how the inquiries are open for inspections or attendances at auctions are slowing down, but the clearance rates haven't. And when they called it based on 2 weekends of low clearance rates, particularly over Easter and Anzac, I thought that was a really big call. And then we've just heard from one of our senior auctioneers around the country that they have sold so many properties over reserve on the weekend that it's almost strange and certainly bucking the trend.
Yeah, I guess our view is that it's probably a bit too early to be calling the top of the market. Yes, we had a pretty weak April, but keep in mind, obviously there was a lot of public holidays over April. We had Easter, and that saw the auction clearance rates fall, auction volumes fall quite a way. So our view is we're probably getting pretty close to the top of the market, but there's still going to be some growth for the next few months at least. It may just not be quite as strong as what we've been seeing over the last 6 or 9 months. And that's what you would expect given what we've seen from the banking regulator recently cracking down on particularly the investor segment of the market. Last time they did that, we saw a slowdown in the rate of growth. So we would expect that to start to occur in the coming months, but we still think values are going to be rising.
Right. How much of the change do you put down to the macroprudential measures that have been imposed by the regulators?
It's possibly had a bit of an impact. I mean, we got the letter out to the public about a month ago, but obviously those conversations that APRA has with the lenders have been going on for a number of months, and we've been seeing a lot of lenders increasing their interest rates to investors and increasing interest rates on interest-only loans. So I think behind the scenes this has all been changing for a while, and it may be having a little bit of an impact, but really I think it's going to take a couple of months to at least to see the real impact of these changes.
Yeah. Do you think that people are still at a point where they can find a little more money, a little extra to go the distance?
Oh, I think there's definitely some of that going on, and obviously the big factors in Sydney and Melbourne in particular are that there's just a lack of stock available for sale. There's plenty of people willing to buy. You've got New South Wales and Victoria's population increasing by 100,000 people a year. So on the demand side, there's lots of demand, and there's still this low level of supply available for sale. So that's creating the upwards pressure on prices.
Do you think we need to be careful not to get too caught up in these numbers? If you take a look at year-on-year growth, Sydney and Melbourne are still posting good results, aren't they?
Yeah,
some would say outstanding.
Well, yeah, and some other parts of the country are in devastation, but you never see anything or hear anything about that.
Yeah.
No, that's right. And I mean, you can, looking at a monthly index, or the index is actually daily as well, you can see some of these seasonal blips. So you tend not to try and get too carried away with the month-to-month or week-to-week changes. I guess the trend is your friend. And if we look over the first 4 months of this year, I mean, values are still up 3.6% across the capital cities, up 5% in Sydney, 4.7% in Melbourne, up 6.6% so far this year in Hobart. So the market's still pretty strong, even though we have had a weaker month.
Cameron, you're a clever numbers guy. You'll speak to people and anecdotally they'll say to you, I would be nervous about borrowing $1 million at the moment because we just don't know what sort of rises are ahead. What sort of figures do you think people should factor in when it comes to rises so they can still comfortably maintain a mortgage that they bolt on for today and forecasting, say, 2-3 years ahead?
Well, the banks have serviceability calculations, and basically what they look at when someone borrows is, can this person afford to borrow when interest rates are either 2% higher than they are currently, or they're sitting at 7.25%, whichever one's actually higher. So if you can look at your interest rates and say, okay, whatever it is today, can I manage if it's, say, 7.5%? That's when you should be. That's what you should be doing your calculations on.
Sorry, Cameron.
I was just going to say, and I guess the other point is, just because the bank's willing to lend you a certain amount doesn't necessarily mean you need to borrow all of that.
Yeah.
I know from my own experience, I've spoken to the banks before, and what they're prepared to lend me and what I'm prepared to borrow are sometimes two fairly different figures.
I'm very glad you said that, because I've been concerned for some time that the climb in interest rates, albeit 1% or 2%, could be a significant increase in your repayments. And I calculated, rightly or wrongly, if they went from 4% to 6%, it was something like 41% increase in your repayments. And interest rates can go from 4 to 6.
Oh, they certainly can. They've been there before. I guess the only thing I would say is we're in a pretty low inflation, low growth environment. So, yes, over the term of a 25, 30-year mortgage, I think there's a very good chance they go back up to that level. But in the near future, I think it's probably quite a ways away until we're getting back to interest rates at that level.
Cameron, I'm supposed to be talking the market up, not down, so you've got to help me talk it down a little bit.
Yeah, good on you. Thank you very much, Cameron, for your time. Cameron Kusher, who's Head of Research at CoreLogic. And Charles, good to have you on board tonight.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Insightful. And if you're looking to sell your home, buy your next one, or find a reliable expert to manage your investment property, simply drop C21 a line and they'll help you achieve your real estate goals. So that website is propertyfasttrack.century21.com.au. Charles, you're back here next Monday. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Nick.
I hope you get a round of golf in between.
Me too.
That's his other passion.